All right, so let's continue then to get analysis on political developments at the moment. Of course, a short while ago, we told you of a letter that was written by ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa to DA leader John Steenhuisen, accusing him of shifting goalposts in negotiations over cabinet positions. The letter has been seen by the SABC. Ramaphosa says he informed Steenhuisen that they found the letter from the DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zille offensive, condescending and inconsistent with the Constitution. But let's unpack this and get reaction from political analyst Sanusha Naidu. Sanusha, thank you so much for your time. Of course, the nation is on tenterhooks at this point in time, as we still are nowhere nearer to finding a solution in as far as where this government of national unity is going. At the moment, what we do know, there are contentions between the DA and the ANC. What do we make now of this letter that has been seen, written by ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa to DA leader John Steenhuisen? And you will, of course, recall that the FedEx of the DA is also meeting today. One would only assume it is to discuss, this letter that we are now talking about.
Good day, Onachi, and good day to the viewers. I think it's just becoming completely tedious right now. I mean, we really need to create and get this government of national unity operationalized. The cabinet needs to be appointed. The government needs to get on with its business. We need to have the ministries getting down to what the real issues are, and the mandate is that nobody got a single majority, and this kind of toing and froing and this kind of back and forth and releasing letters in the media and playing this kind of megaphone approach to the negotiations. I mean, it's just becoming increasingly protracted, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to see where we are. And what's really frustrating, I think, for me as a voter, not as an analyst right now, as a voter who voted and wants to actually get the political parties to start working together, is this kind of discussions that are basically taking the kind of architecture and the kind of approach where I think that this constant toing and froing and back and forth doesn't really do much for us as the electorate, as the citizenry of the country. I think it keeps us in a limbo, and I think at this point in time, whoever it is that is creating the stalling, if it's the DA, if it's the ANC, if what we're seeing in the letter in terms of what the ANC has offered with regard to the 6 portfolios and the 4 deputy ministry positions, again, if that's not sufficient enough for the DA, then if it's not enough, walk away. And I think that's a challenge, because that in itself creates this notion that you can't keep haggling over things, that you need to get down to the issue of the government and the business of government. And if you keep haggling in the way that it is, then if you're not satisfied and none of you feel that it's part of what you want and you keep changing the goalposts, then what keeps you in this government of national unity?
You use the word walking away. What does that essentially entail? And the reason I'm asking is because essentially when we started hearing that, following the elections, of course, with no outright winner, that the government was, or the ANC at least, was thinking of forming a government of national unity, I think South Africans were okay with that, in the sense that that is what essentially the outcome of the elections was spelling out, that somehow or the other we will see a coalition government. So work together, find a solution. So without going into the nitty-gritties in terms of who wants what then should be happening if the DA, for instance, decides we are walking away from this GNU, and then the ANC is left to deal with the 8 other parties that are still there?
Well, I think that it gives it makes it much more than just having this kind of haggling going on. And what we are seeing in the 2 letters that have now been released on social media and in the public domain, that gives the sense that it's not enough just in terms of this interpretation of Clause 16. And I think the real issue right now is you need to work together. And this is not what the electorate, in my opinion, and when I went to vote, when I actually stood in that voting booth and I cast my vote, I actually want to have an effective, efficient government. I want you to be able to work together. I want you to find the common ground. And if you can't find that common ground, and you're not finding that consensus even now, then it makes it even more difficult for me to see how you're going to find the trust to work with each other. So if this is where this is kind of hanging in the balance in terms of where we are, then for the ANC, they need to think about, where are they going in terms of their the rest of the other political parties that make up the GNU. And in that letter that we see that has been penned by Cyril Ramaphosa and has been made available on social media, both of the issue there is really about talking to everybody. And so this is the idea that there's a reason why you never got a majority. Even if the DA got just under 22%, 21.8% of the vote, it doesn't give you the 30% or the 25% or the 28%. It's a reason. They want the people of South Africa want to be able to see that you can manage to get the critical issues in the policy domain working, your ministries in terms of where you are. And I think at this point in time, there has to be a sense of what is the compromise. And the compromise cannot be that you have to keep upping and keep trying to use certain ministries in terms of a bargaining chip. I think that's where we are right now. They're bargaining, and this idea of using the media and the megaphone approach in terms of bargaining, I think becomes very, very disruptive to what we want to see. It's disrupting Parliament. It's disrupting the markets. The markets are not necessarily where they need to be. I mean, it's disrupting people's lives going forward. I mean, ordinary South Africans are still going ahead with their ordinary lives. It's just the fact that we just don't have a cabinet, and we have to actually have that governance arrangement and governing arrangement put into place. So if this is going to be the protractedness of saying this is where we want, this is how we're going to haggle, this is how we're going to move things, well, you know what? I think both sides, both in terms of the FedEx meeting that's happening today, there needs to be something that needs to put into play. And if you can't do that, then you need to think about where you want to be in this kind of political landscape that we have right now.
And just talking about how this is essentially and potentially disruptive, I mean, we have asked our journalists, just to get comments from South Africans across the country, and a lot of them obviously saying that they would like to see some finality to this so that we can actually get on with our lives. But in the event, of course, that this becomes, too problematic, what then should be the direction to go? If for instance, the DA decides, okay, they're not going to be a part of it. What then does the ANC do, looking at other parties that have not necessarily signed on that dotted line to join the GNU at this point in time? We do know, of course, the EFF, as Samkele put it, it is lurking. It is around the periphery, and they are ready to negotiate. There's also the MK party. There are also other parties, of course, that have not indicated that they will join, like Action SA. But what do we then do to make this a final decision without, of course, being rushed, so that we have to live with this coalition that will perhaps, not even see the end of this particular year in terms of the agreements?
Well, I think the issue right now is that GNU, in terms of where it is in the context of the composition that we're seeing, I mean, the options that you are seeing is the number of other political parties, the IFP, the Patriotic Alliance, the Freedom Front Plus, etc. I mean, if there is to be a protracted or a kind of attraction that seems to see that we can't find the common ground, the question is, how they will then see it go forward. I think a few of the parties said they want to get the business of the GNU going. So they haven't really got into that kind of lane where they try to demand for political portfolios in a way. They kind of want to use their space in the way that they can keep their GNU going, but also ensure that they are part of the processes in terms of decision making and so forth. And I think it does give the ANC a little bit of traction. But of course, the challenge again is this idea that if we don't go into a particular kind of formula of the GNU, then of course it's going to create all kinds of different headaches in terms of the markets, etc. I think the markets will self-correct. I think the markets get into a tiz. They realize that this is where we are. Our market also has to be looked at not just in the context of one particular direction. There are many different variables and variations and layers to the market. And so right now, I think if this GNU is to actually be going forward, I think both sides, neither the ANC nor the DA can afford to do what they are doing. And of course, in the case of the DA, I think they have to also be able to understand that it is going to be difficult in terms of where they are. If they want the portfolios they want, let's work with what you have and then go forward and make sure that that you create the kind of government that you want to create. I mean, trying to negotiate it at the outset in terms of the number of portfolios, etc. I think you can work within what you have and start to move, being within the context of the government. I think is important. Whereas previously you were not there. You did have the Western Cape, and you do have the Western Cape, but being in the context of what you've been saying previously about the kinds of policy, the kinds of engagements you want to have, the kind of government you want to move forward in, here's opportunities for you to take forward. And I think it's very important to understand that and then use that space in order to make sure that you deepen your engagements in terms of the accountability, in terms of the governance, in terms of the policy decisions and the policy engagements. And I think right now, hopefully, there will be some prevailing minds that say, let's move this forward and stop the haggling.
Sanusha, thank you so much for your time and, of course, just unpacking all of that in amidst this uncertainty and, of course, confusion, I would imagine, for many South Africans at this point in time. But essentially, that is political analyst Sanusha Naidu, and early on we had politics reporter Samgele Maseko just talking about the latest developments in as far as the government of national unity are concerned, with the ANC rather, having responded to that letter that was penned by DA leader John Steenhuisen on the 24th of June 2024. Cyril Ramaphosa of the ANC now responding to that letter, essentially saying that the latest proposals by the DA do not align with the principles that were adopted and encapsulated in the statement of intent. We'll continue to monitor developments and, of course, give you more reaction and analysis in as far as what this all means, essentially, since there is no government of national unity that has been finalized as yet, and we are still waiting for that announcement by President Cyril Ramaphosa of cabinet.